many of these psychic things are quite natural, and my function is not so much to teach people how to do remote viewing as to give them permission to use an ability that we already have. And I could say that our program at SRI was not an airy-fairy program doing intuitive diagnosis, but we were funded for about $25 million by the CIA and DIA, Army Intelligence, for 23 years. So this was an ongoing intelligence gathering activity. Basically, we were the X-Files. We had people coming and going, asking us about the American hostages held by Iran. We were asked to find a downed Russian airplane with an atomic bomb on it. Joe McMoneagle described what was going on in a Russian building. He described the construction of an enormous submarine, a 500-foot submarine, and people laughed at us. They said, there's never been that's 3 times bigger than any submarine in the world. They said, you've really blown it this time. And within 6 months, the Russians rolled out the biggest submarine in the world, a Typhoon-class submarine. And Joe was the first person to describe that, which he did very accurately. We described a Chinese atomic bomb test 3 days before it was carried out. And we're accurate in describing that although the test would be carried out, it would fail, that they would just burn the uranium in a big pyrotechnic display. Ingo Swann described that 3 days in advance. So in addition to the discovery that distance doesn't matter, that it's no harder to describe a Soviet weapons test in Novosibirsk, 6,000 miles away, than it is to describe something across the street in Palo Alto. We also showed that you can describe things in the future just as accurately as the present. In fact, after I left SRI, we set up a little company called Delphi Associates, and one of our big successes was forecasting changes in the silver commodity market with an enthusiastic investor. Every week for 9 weeks, we forecasted whether December silver would go up a little or up a lot, down a little or down a lot, and we were successful every time and made $120,000 for our little company. Edgar Casey was an early remote viewing. He was a person who specialized in intuitive diagnosis. He was called a sleeping prophet because he would do his medical intuition when he was resting or sleeping, and he diagnosed thousands of people describing their illnesses, and I have done that as well. In fact, it turns out that intuitive diagnosis is easier than remote viewing of a distant place. And 2 physicians that I know, Judith Orloff is a psychiatrist in Los Angeles, and she has a very good book called Second Sight, talking about intuitive diagnosis. There's a diagnosis of a person who is not in the room with you. And Mona Lisa Schultz is a Harvard-based psychiatrist who's written a book called Awakening Intuition, Teaching Intuitive Diagnosis. And it seems that that's easier to do than remote viewing because you have a human person to interact with. Now, you may not know that person. Somebody may come to you and say, can you tell me what's the matter with my sister Susie? And of course, you don't know her sister Susie. But if you learn to quiet your mind, you can visualize that person and quite accurately describe what's the matter with her.